The encounter. The rain beat relentlessly against the windshield of Richard Montgomery's vintage Ford Mustang. Each drop seemed to drum out a rhythm that was both hypnotic and unsettling, amplifying the silence that enveloped him. Asheville's once lively cobblestone streets now lay desolate as if the downpour had washed away the very essence of life from them. The historic buildings, draped in ivy and crowned with intricate ironwork, blended into the encroaching shadows, transforming the town into a ghostly tableau. Richard's thoughts churned like the storm outside. He had achieved what many only dreamt of: wealth, success, power. His name was synonymous with prestige, and his every wish was met with the snap of his fingers. Yet despite the grandeur of his achievements, a profound emptiness gnawed at him. There was a void that no amount of material success or high social status could fill. In moments of solitude like this, when the storm outside mirrored the tempest within, the hollowness became deafening. He drove through the deluge, his thoughts drifting like the rain-soaked streets. The once familiar streets of Asheville were now a blur of gray and black, their contours obscured by the downpour. As his car approached a red light, his foot eased off the accelerator. The world outside seemed to dissolve into a formless wash of water and shadow. It was then, in the periphery of his vision, that Richard saw it, a flicker of movement in the darkened alleyway that cut between the historic buildings. At first he thought it was merely another trick of the dim street lights or a figment of his weary mind. But something compelled him to look again. There, huddled against the wall, was a small figure. Richard's heart skipped a beat as he realized the figure was a child. She was no older than 8 or 9, drenched to the bone, her tiny frame almost swallowed by the rain. Clutched in her arms was something even smaller, an infant barely visible through the torrents. Richard's instincts screamed at him to look away, to retreat into the comfort of his insulated world. People like him didn't get involved in the struggles of those less fortunate. It was a luxury he had long left behind. Yet the sight of that shivering child, vulnerable and exposed to the elements, tugged at a long-dormant sense of responsibility within him. He turned the wheel sharply, guiding the Mustang into the narrow alley. The tires splashed through the puddles, sending water cascading in all directions. As he drew closer, he saw the girl's eyes widen with a mixture of fear and desperation. Richard's heart ached at the sight. He parked the car a few feet away, the rain immediately soaking through his expensive coat as he stepped out. The downpour drenched him almost instantly, but he paid it no mind. He approached the girl slowly, deliberately, not wanting to startle her. "Hey," he called out softly, his voice barely audible over the relentless rain. "Are you okay?" The girl's eyes, wide and tear-streaked, remained fixed on him, a mixture of terror and pleading evident in their depths. Her grip on the baby tightened, as if trying to shield the infant from the world's cruelty. Richard could see the baby's tiny, scrunched-up face peeking out from the girl's arms, utterly helpless. "I'm not going to hurt you," Richard said, kneeling down to her level. The rain trickled down from his hair, blurring his vision. "I just want to help. It's not safe out here." The girl hesitated, her gaze darting from him to the baby and back again. Her small frame shook, and Richard could see the fear in her eyes. Yet after a moment, she gave a small, trembling nod, a gesture of reluctant trust. Richard reached out gently, offering his hand to her. "Come on, let's get you out of the rain." With a cautious look, the girl took his hand. Richard helped her to her feet, guiding her carefully to the car. The rain continued to pour down, soaking them both as they climbed inside. Richard started the engine, the warmth of the car's interior a stark contrast to the cold, wet night outside. As they settled into the car, Richard glanced at the rearview mirror. The girl, now sitting in the backseat, held the baby close, her eyes darting around with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Richard's heart ached at the sight. This moment, this decision to intervene, was something he hadn't anticipated, but knew it marked the beginning of something profound. The drive back to his home was enveloped in a deep silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic patter of rain against the car's roof. The familiar streets of Asheville, now drenched and ghostly, passed by in a blur. Richard stole glances at the rearview mirror, where the girl sat quietly, her eyes wide and watchful. "I'm Richard," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was gentle but steady, trying to offer a semblance of reassurance. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated, her grip on the baby tightening as she looked at him. Her silence spoke volumes, and Richard could sense the weight of her uncertainty and fear. It was clear she had been through a lot, and her next words would likely reveal more than he was prepared for. Richard's mind raced with questions about how she ended up in such a dire situation, about the baby she clutched so protectively, and about what had driven her to seek shelter in the cold, unyielding rain. As the car navigated the winding roads towards his home, Richard felt a stirring within him, a flicker of empathy that began to dissolve the emptiness he had felt for so long. This encounter, as unexpected as it was, had set in motion a chain of events that would challenge his perception of himself and the world around him. and as he glanced at the girl in the rearview mirror, he knew that the journey ahead would be one of discovery and transformation for both of them. The unspoken past. Richard's home loomed ahead, its grand facade barely visible through the veil of rain. The estate, a sprawling edifice of stone and glass, seemed almost out of place in the stormy night. As the Mustang rolled up the driveway, Richard's thoughts churned with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. He knew that the girl and the baby were not just in need of shelter. Their arrival marked the beginning of a journey that would unravel hidden truths and challenge his very understanding of himself. The rain continued to batter the car as Richard parked in the garage. He looked back at the girl, who was still holding the baby close. Her eyes, wide and wary, followed his every movement. Richard's heart went out to her. She looked as if she was bracing herself for whatever came next. "Come on," Richard said gently, opening the car door and stepping into the rain once more. "Let's get you both inside where it's warm." The girl hesitated before stepping out of the car, her tiny frame shivering despite the shelter provided by the garage. Richard took her hand again, leading her towards the entrance of the house. The baby, wrapped in a thin blanket, was nestled securely in her arms. Inside, the warmth of the house was a stark contrast to the cold, wet night outside. The grand foyer, with its high ceilings and elegant decor, felt almost surreal in the context of the events that had unfolded. Richard guided the girl and the baby towards the main living area, where a fire crackled invitingly in the hearth. "Let's get you both dried off and comfortable," Richard said, his voice soothing. "I'll fetch some towels and warm clothes." The girl nodded silently, her eyes taking in the opulence of the room with a mix of awe and trepidation. Richard could sense her unease and quickly moved to alleviate it. He retrieved towels and a set of warm, oversized clothes from the storage closet, then returned to where the girl sat on a plush sofa, the baby still securely held in her arms. Richard handed her the towels and clothes, then set about starting a kettle for tea. The girl took the items with a grateful but wary look, her movements slow and deliberate as she began to dry off the baby and herself. Richard watched, his heart aching at the sight of their vulnerability. As the girl carefully removed the baby's wet blanket, Richard noticed a few scars and bruises on her arms, evidence of a life marked by hardship. He wanted to ask her about them, but he sensed that now was not the right moment. Instead, he busied himself with making the tea, hoping the warmth and comfort would help ease her tension. When the tea was ready, Richard brought a cup to the girl, who took it with trembling hands. The warmth of the tea seemed to bring a hint of relief to her strained features. She sipped slowly, her eyes occasionally darting to Richard as if trying to gauge his intentions. "I hope you like it," Richard said gently. "It's just a simple chamomile tea. It might help you relax a bit." The girl nodded, though her expression remained guarded. Richard could see that she was still processing the sudden change in her circumstances. He decided to try a different approach to make her feel more at ease. "Do you want to tell me your name?" he asked again, his voice soft and encouraging. "And maybe a bit about what happened. I promise I'm here to help, not to judge." The girl looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and uncertainty. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Lily. This is Ben," she said, glancing at the baby in her arms. "He's my little brother." Richard's heart softened at the mention of the baby's name. He could see the love and protectiveness in Lily's eyes, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had dominated her demeanor since their meeting. "Lily, can you tell me a bit about what happened? Why were you out in the rain?" Richard asked gently, trying to create a space where she felt safe to share. Lily hesitated, her gaze dropping to her lap as she struggled to find the words. We were running away," she said finally, her voice cracking with emotion. "Our home, it wasn't safe anymore. There were people, bad people. They came looking for us. So we had to leave. I just wanted to keep Ben safe." Richard's heart ached as he listened to her story. The pain and fear in her voice were palpable, and he could see the toll that her experiences had taken on her. He wanted to reach out to offer reassurance, but he also knew that he needed to understand more about their situation before he could provide meaningful help. "Lily, you did the right thing by coming here," Richard said softly. "You're safe now. I promise I'll do everything I can to help you and Ben. But I need to understand more about what happened so that I can make sure you're really safe." Lily nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I just don't know what to do now. I'm scared." Richard placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, his own sense of resolve strengthening. "We'll figure this out together," he said. "You don't have to be scared anymore. We'll take it one step at a time." As the warmth of the fire and the soothing tea began to ease Lily's tension, Richard took a seat across from her. He knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but he was determined to help them navigate it. The encounter had ignited something within him, an awareness of a world beyond his own, a world filled with struggles and resilience that he had previously been blind to. In the quiet of the room, as the rain continued to pour outside, Richard made a silent vow to himself and to Lily and Ben. He would use his resources, his influence, and his heart to ensure their safety and help them find a path forward. This was no longer just a chance encounter. It was the beginning of a profound journey, one that would test his understanding of compassion and reshape his view of what it truly meant to be rich. Echoes of the past. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, the rain having tapered off to a light drizzle. The once intense downpour had left the world outside looking fresh and washed, but the remnants of the storm clung to the air, heavy with the scent of earth and wet leaves. Inside the warmth of Richard's home, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the stormy night that had preceded it. Lily and Ben had slept soundly in the guest room that Richard had prepared for them. The room, decorated with soft, neutral tones and a large, comfortable bed, was designed to offer a serene and inviting space. Richard had been careful to make sure they had everything they needed: fresh clothes, blankets, and most importantly, a sense of security. As Lily awoke, the weight of the previous night's events seemed to settle over her like a shroud. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the central heating and the distant chirping of birds. She stirred slowly, her gaze drifting to the peaceful face of her baby brother who slept beside her. The sight of him, safe and comfortable, brought a small measure of relief, but the anxiety of their situation still lingered. Downstairs, Richard was busy preparing breakfast. His kitchen, a sprawling space with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art appliances, was filled with the aromas of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. As he moved about, his thoughts were focused on how to make Lily and Ben feel more at home. When Lily and Ben finally descended the stairs, the sight of the kitchen and its inviting spread brought a faint smile to Lily's face. Richard greeted them with a warm, genuine smile, his own sense of purpose sharpened by the responsibility he felt for their well-being. "Good morning," Richard said cheerfully. "I hope you slept well. I make some breakfast. Please, help yourselves." Lily hesitated, her eyes still reflecting the cautiousness she felt. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Everything looks wonderful." As they sat down to eat, Richard took the opportunity to engage Lily in conversation, hoping to ease her unease and gain more insight into their situation. "How did you and Ben sleep? I hope the room was comfortable." Lily nodded, taking a tentative bite of a croissant. "Yes, it was very comfortable. Thank you." Richard watched her closely, noting the guarded way she responded. He knew that gaining her trust would be a gradual process. "Lily, I understand that this is a difficult time for you. If you feel up to it, I'd like to help you in any way I can. Maybe you could tell me a bit more about what happened, how you ended up in that alley, and why you were running." The question hung in the air, delicate yet probing. Lily's eyes darkened, and she took a deep breath before speaking. "We were living in a small apartment on the edge of town. Our parents, they were taken away a few months ago. They were in trouble with some dangerous people. We tried to stay out of their way, but when they found out we were still around, they started coming after us." Richard listened intently, his heart heavy with empathy. "I'm so sorry to hear that. It must have been incredibly frightening for you." Lily nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "It was. We tried to stay hidden, but when those people came looking for us, we had to leave. We had nowhere else to go. That's why I took Ben and ran. I just wanted to keep him safe." Richard's mind raced as he processed her words. The danger they had been fleeing from was real and immediate. He could see that Lily's protective instincts were fierce and unwavering, but he also understood that their situation was far from over. "I want to help you," Richard said firmly, "but first we need to make sure you're completely safe. I can arrange for security measures and find a place where you'll be protected from those who are looking for you." Lily's eyes widened with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "You do that for us?" "Absolutely," Richard replied, his voice resolute. "It's the least I can do after everything you've been through." As breakfast continued, Richard and Lily spoke more about their situation. Lily shared snippets of their life before the turmoil began, moments of joy and normalcy overshadowed by the dark cloud of their parents' troubles. Through her stories, Richard began to piece together the fragments of their past, understanding the depth of their loss and the strength it had taken for Lily to care for her brother under such dire circumstances. After breakfast, Richard suggested they take a break and explore the grounds of the estate. He hoped that a change of scenery might provide a bit of comfort and distraction. Lily agreed, albeit cautiously, and together they ventured outside. The estate's grounds were expansive, featuring manicured gardens, a large pond, and a network of walking paths. The fresh air and the gentle drizzle were a welcome change from the oppressive atmosphere of the previous night. As they walked, Richard pointed out various features of the property, trying to engage Lily in conversation about neutral topics to help her relax. At one point, they stopped by the pond, where Richard watched as Lily and Ben observed the water. The baby's eyes widened in curiosity as he watched the raindrops ripple across the surface. Lily's face softened as she watched Ben, her earlier tension easing slightly. "This place is beautiful," Lily remarked, her voice tinged with wonder. It's so different from what we're used to. I'm glad you like it, Richard said with a smile. It's a peaceful spot. I hope it helps you feel a bit more at ease. As they continued their walk, Richard couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Lily's story, something she wasn't ready to share yet. He understood that trust would take time to build, but he was determined to offer her the support she needed. Back inside the house, Richard arranged for a meeting with his security team. He needed to ensure that Lily and Ben would be protected, and he wanted to make sure they were not only safe, but also able to begin the process of rebuilding their lives. Later that day, Richard sat down with Lily to discuss the next steps. He wanted to make sure she felt involved and informed about the plans he was putting in place. I've arranged for additional security to be installed around the property, Richard said. We'll also be looking into finding a more permanent and secure place for you and Ben. In the meantime, if there's anything else you need, please let me know. Lily looked at him, her expression a mix of gratitude and relief. Thank you, Richard. I don't know how to repay you for everything you've done. Richard shook his head. You don't owe me anything. I'm just glad I could help. This is about making sure you and Ben are safe and have a chance to start over. As the day drew to a close, Richard reflected on the profound impact Lily and Ben had already had on his life. Their presence had disrupted his routine and challenged his perceptions, but it had also opened his eyes to a world beyond his own, a world filled with struggles that he had previously been insulated from. In helping Lily and Ben, Richard found a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment. The journey ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but he was committed to supporting them every step of the way. And as he looked out at the still drizzling rain, he knew that their paths were now intertwined in ways that neither of them could have anticipated. The unexpected bond. The days following Lily and Ben's arrival at Richard's estate were filled with a flurry of activity. Richard's team worked diligently to enhance the security of the property, installing surveillance cameras and employing additional security personnel. At the same time, Richard made arrangements for a more permanent and secure living situation for Lily and Ben, but he knew that earning Lily's trust and helping her settle in were equally important. The early autumn days grew shorter, and the crisp, cool air carried the promise of change. Richard's estate, now a haven of warmth and safety for Lily and Ben, began to take on a new character, a place where hope and healing were beginning to take root. One afternoon, as the golden sunlight filtered through the trees, Richard found himself in the library reviewing documents related to Lily and Ben's new living arrangements. He was so engrossed in his work that he almost didn't notice when Lily entered the room. She stood at the doorway, her eyes scanning the shelves of books that lined the walls. Is everything all right? Richard asked, looking up from his desk. He noticed that Lily's demeanor was different from the guarded anxiety she had carried with her in the early days. Lily nodded, though a hint of hesitation remained in her eyes. I was just exploring the house a bit more. I didn't mean to intrude. Not at all, Richard said with a warm smile. Feel free to look around. If you need anything or have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Lily ventured further into the room, her gaze lingering on the spines of the books. I've always loved reading, she said softly. There's something comforting about losing yourself in a story. Richard raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Do you have a favorite genre? Lily shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. I like a bit of everything. Fiction, nonfiction, mysteries, even poetry. It's a way to escape, to find solace in words. Richard could see the passion in her eyes as she spoke about her love for reading. It was a side of her that had remained hidden until now. If you'd like, you're welcome to borrow any of the books here, he offered. Consider it a small way to make this place feel more like home. Lily's eyes lit up with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Richard. That's very kind of you. As the days passed, Lily began to open up more, both to Richard and to the world around her. She started to explore the estate's grounds more frequently, often with Ben and Tao. Richard observed her growing comfort with her surroundings and noted the small changes, the way her posture relaxed, the way she began to smile more readily. One crisp morning, Richard decided to join Lily and Ben on one of their walks. He found them in the garden where Lily was kneeling by a patch of vibrant flowers, showing Ben how to gently touch the petals. The baby's delighted giggles filled the air, a sound that had become increasingly frequent since their arrival. Good morning, Richard said, approaching with a friendly wave. I hope I'm not interrupting. Lily looked up, her face brightening at the sight of him. Not at all. Ben and I were just enjoying the garden. He seems fascinated by the flowers. Richard chuckled softly, watching as Ben reached out to touch a particularly bright bloom. He's got quite the curiosity. It's wonderful to see him exploring. Lily nodded, her gaze still fixed on Ben. It's been nice here. I feel like we're starting to find a bit of peace. Richard smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction. I'm glad to hear that. It's important to find moments of calm and normalcy, especially after everything you've been through. As they continued their walk, Richard and Lily engaged in more casual conversation. They talked about their favorite books, their experiences growing up, and their hopes for the future. Lily's stories revealed a resilient spirit, and Richard found himself drawn to her strength and determination. Later that week, Richard organized a small gathering in the estate's sunroom, a cozy, glass-enclosed space that overlooked the garden. He invited a few trusted friends and colleagues, hoping to create a more relaxed atmosphere where Lily and Ben could interact with others and begin to feel more integrated into their new environment. The gathering was informal with a selection of refreshments and light conversation. Richard introduced Lily to his guests, carefully selecting people who would be understanding and supportive. As the evening unfolded, Lily began to mingle, her initial shyness gradually giving way to a more relaxed demeanor. One of Richard's friends, Emily, a local artist with a kind disposition, struck up a conversation with Lily. They quickly discovered a shared love for art and storytelling. Emily's warm and empathetic nature helped Lily feel at ease, and before long, the two women were deep in discussion about their favorite books and creative endeavors. Richard watched from a distance, pleased to see Lily engaging and forming connections. He knew that building a support network was crucial for her and Ben as they adjusted to their new life. As the gathering came to a close, Richard took a moment to reflect on the journey they had embarked upon together. The process of helping Lily and Ben rebuild their lives was far from over, but the progress they had made was heartening. Richard was beginning to understand that the true value of wealth and success lay not in material possessions, but in the ability to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. One evening, as Richard and Lily sat together in the library, the conversation turned to their future plans. Lily seemed more relaxed and hopeful, her earlier apprehension replaced by a budding sense of optimism. "I've been thinking," Richard said, "about how we can make things even better for you and Ben. Is there anything specific you'd like to pursue or explore while you're here?" "I want to ensure that you have opportunities to do what you love." Lily considered the question, her eyes thoughtful. "I've always wanted to continue my education, maybe take some classes or work on a project. And I'd love to get involved in the community, find ways to give back." Richard nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. I'd be happy to help you with finding educational opportunities and connecting with local organizations. It's important to have goals and passions, especially after everything you've been through." Lily's eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you, Richard. That means a lot. I want to make the most of this chance and create something positive out of our situation." As the days turned into weeks, Richard and Lily continued to build their relationship, discovering a mutual respect and understanding. The bond that had formed between them was unexpected but profound, and it brought a new sense of purpose to Richard's life. In helping Lily and Ben, Richard had not only provided them with safety and support, but had also rediscovered a deeper meaning in his own life. The journey they were on together was one of healing and growth, and it was shaping up to be a transformative experience for all involved. The estate, once a symbol of Richard's success and privilege, had become a place of renewal and hope, a testament to the power of compassion and the unexpected bonds that could be formed through acts of kindness and understanding. The unexpected revelation. The arrival of autumn brought with it a sense of renewal and change. The estate's gardens transformed into a tapestry of reds and golds, and the crisp, cool air carried with it a feeling of possibility. Lily and Ben were gradually adjusting to their new life, finding comfort in their routines and beginning to embrace the opportunities Richard had provided. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of indigo, Richard and Lily sat together in the sunroom. The room, bathed in the soft glow of lamps and the last vestiges of daylight, was a serene retreat from the outside world. They had been discussing Lily's plans for continuing her education and exploring local community projects. "I've been thinking about taking some art classes," Lily said, her eyes reflecting the warm light of the room. "It's something I've always wanted to do, but I never had the chance." Richard's interest was piqued. "That sounds like a fantastic idea. Art can be a powerful form of expression and healing. I'd be happy to help you find the right classes and resources." Lily's smile was tinged with gratitude. "Thank you, Richard. It means a lot to have this opportunity." As they talked, the conversation shifted to lighter topics: favorite books, local attractions, and their plans for the upcoming holiday season. Lily was more relaxed than she had been in the past, and Richard was pleased to see her enjoying the moment. Just as the conversation was winding down, the front doorbell rang, breaking the tranquility of the evening. Richard glanced at Lily, his brow furrowed in curiosity. "I wasn't expecting any visitors tonight. Let me see who it is." Richard rose from his seat and made his way to the front door. Opening it, he was greeted by a well-dressed man in his early 50s, carrying a leather briefcase. The man's appearance was both polished and professional, and his demeanor was one of purpose. "Good evening," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Henry Callahan. I have an appointment with Mr. Montgomery." Richard shook the man's hand, his curiosity growing. "Yes, Mr. Callahan. Please come in. I wasn't expecting you, but I'm glad you're here." Henry Callahan followed Richard into the sunroom where Lily was seated, looking somewhat puzzled. As Henry introduced himself, Richard noticed a subtle change in Lily's expression, an unmistakable flicker of recognition and unease. "Lily," Richard said, "this is Henry Callahan. He's here on business. Henry, this is Lily." Henry offered a polite nod. "Nice to meet you, Lily." Lily's response was polite but guarded. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Callahan." Richard gestured for them to sit and offered refreshments, but Lily remained unusually quiet. Henry, sensing the tension, quickly addressed the matter at hand. "I apologize for the late visit," Henry began, "but I have some important information that might be relevant to Lily." Richard looked at Henry with interest. "Information? What kind of information?" Henry opened his briefcase and retrieved a folder. "It concerns Lily's family and their previous dealings with my firm. We've been looking into some legal matters related to their assets and outstanding issues." Lily's eyes widened, her expression a mix of confusion and apprehension. "Why would you be looking into my family's matters?" Henry took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Your family was involved in a business venture that has recently come under scrutiny. There are unresolved legal and financial issues that need to be addressed. We've been trying to locate you to provide some clarity and assistance." Richard glanced at Lily, noting her growing distress. "Is there anything you can tell us about these issues? Lily and Ben have been through a lot already." Henry nodded. "Of course, your family was involved in a significant investment project that unfortunately went awry. There were complications, and some of the investments were tied up in legal disputes. As a result, there are potential claims against the estate, which could impact your financial situation." Lily's face grew pale, her hands trembling slightly. "I had no idea. We've been trying to escape from those people, not deal with more problems." Richard placed a comforting hand on Lily's shoulder. "We'll figure this out together, Lily. Henry, what steps can we take to address these issues?" Henry nodded, appreciating Richard's support. "First, we need to review the documentation and understand the full scope of the situation. I brought the relevant papers with me, and I'd be happy to go over them with both of you. The goal is to resolve any outstanding issues and find a way to protect Lily and Ben from further complications." Lily looked at Henry with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Do you think there's a way to resolve this without putting us in danger?" Henry's expression softened. "It's possible. The key is to address the legal matters promptly and transparently. We'll need to work together to ensure that your safety and well-being are prioritized." As Henry laid out the documents and began to explain the legal intricacies, Richard listened intently, taking mental notes and considering the next steps. He could see the weight of the situation pressing down on Lily, and he was determined to support her in any way he could. The discussion continued for several hours, with Henry providing detailed explanations and answering questions. By the end of the meeting, Lily had a clearer understanding of the issues at hand and a tentative plan for moving forward. While the situation was complex, there was a glimmer of hope that it could be resolved without further harm. As Henry prepared to leave, he reassured Lily and Richard that he would continue to work on their behalf and keep them updated on any developments. Richard offered to accompany Henry to the door, wanting to discuss a few additional details in private. Once Henry had departed, Richard returned to the sunroom where Lily sat, deep in thought. He took a seat next to her, his expression serious but supportive. "That was a lot to take in," Richard said gently. "How are you feeling?" Lily sighed, her eyes reflecting a mix of exhaustion and relief. "It's overwhelming, but at least we have some direction now. I just want to make sure Ben and I are safe and can move forward." Richard nodded, his resolve firm. "We'll get through this, Lily. I'm here to help you every step of the way. We'll work with Henry and ensure that everything is handled properly. Your safety and well-being are my top priorities." Lily looked at Richard, her gratitude evident. "Thank you, Richard. I don't know what I would have done without your support." Richard gave her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to thank me. It's what friends do for each other. We're in this together." As the night settled in, Richard and Lily shared a quiet moment of reflection. The challenges ahead were daunting, but they faced them with a renewed sense of determination and solidarity. The unexpected revelation about Lily's family had added a new layer of complexity to their journey, but it also reinforced the importance of their bond and their commitment to finding a way forward. The estate, once a symbol of Richard's success and privilege, had become a place of refuge and hope, a place where courage and resilience were tested, and where the power of human connection was continually reaffirmed. As they prepared to face the uncertain future, Richard and Lily knew that their journey together was far from over, but they were ready to confront whatever lay ahead with strength and unwavering support.